I'm Scott Howard with Earthen Natural Building. This is the second day of the Bioarchitecture Primer workshop, and I'm just so grateful for you guys to have the courage to invest in yourself and your education, to be here and absorb all this wonderful, useful information. This is Jim Gale from Food Forest Abundance. He runs a wonderful farm, a food forest in Florida called Galt's Landing. And they do tours, and he's educating people really globally about the power of food forests. And they do landscape installs and permaculture master plans for folks. And I believe they've already done operations in over 50 countries. Jim is really going for it, and I really applaud you, Jim, for your work. And yeah, feel free to take it away.
I don't. I'll just talk. That's what I'm best at. Excuse me. I'm the chief storyteller at Food Forest Abundance. That's my role. That's my title. And Scott, it's a pleasure to be here. It's great to see all of you, and thank you for being aware of this what's going on in the world right now, and more importantly, how to solve it. Right. And so for me, it started about, well, they call me nature boy growing up. So it's in my DNA. It's in my nature. It's in all of our DNA. But I was especially fond of frogs and snakes and turtles and fishing and nature and all that stuff. And so about 17 years ago, I moved to Costa Rica. And I guess a little bit of a backstory is relevant. When I was 19, I had failed pretty significantly the 2 previous years. I was a wrestler, and I didn't place, and it was just a tough couple of years, right? We go through those as humans throughout our lifetimes. And my college wrestling coach had everybody in the room write their goals. Now, I wasn't much of a student, and anytime I was handed a pen and paper, I cringed because I really didn't like studying. I didn't like school. I didn't like the pen and paper. I wanted to wrestle and play with nature. So anyway, what happened when I got the goals, I set them on my desk on a Friday afternoon, and he said to the team, he said, "You cannot come to wrestling practice on Monday unless your goals are finished and on my desk." And so I'm like, oh gosh, what a pain in the butt. Anyway, I procrastinated. Sunday night, I finally started reading the questions. And the question started out with, what can you imagine that you can accomplish having to do with wrestling? And when I asked that question in silence, I was kind of just sitting there after a long, crazy weekend. And I said, I asked myself the question, what do I believe is possible for myself in this context, in wrestling? And as I started writing down and thinking about contemplating my history of success and failure in wrestling, and this is very relevant to the world today, I started dreaming. And I started dreaming in ways that my filters left me. In fact, a little bit before that, I had listened to the tape series by Dennis Waitley called The Psychology of Winning. And I was exposed to the reality of goal setting and stuff during that tape series, but I hadn't done it yet. So as I started writing, I started dreaming, and I ended up writing that I wanted to be a 3-time All-American and national champion. When I got back to my coach and I handed him the goals, he literally laughed. Most of it was internal, but he couldn't help letting a little bit of laughter out. He goes, "Jim, these goals are kind of lofty, don't you think?" And it was too late for him to persuade me that I could not achieve those goals because I had already visualized and felt them. I had already felt the success that I was taking a couple hours to lay out my vision. And 4 years later, I ended up being a 4-time All-American and national champion because I wrote the goals and created the vision. And this is relevant for everybody's life. And ask the question, what is your vision? Do you have a compelling vision? Do you have a vision for your own life that gets you out of bed in the morning, that brings you joy when you take action towards the vision? right? And so it was the most profound learning because I learned through that process that, in fact, there's a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Has anybody heard of that book? It's it's epic, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
one of the foundational books that a lot of the current speakers, Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar, and they use that book as reference a lot. Well, Napoleon Hill was commissioned to study the most successful manifestors in the history of the world. And after decades of study, Napoleon Hill deducted that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Now, contemplate that for a second. Whatever your mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Now, was Napoleon Hill wrong? Or did he just make a statement that's practically godlike? Like, wait a minute, whatever I can conceive and believe. Now, I can conceive that I can fly. I just don't believe it, right? So, with that in mind, I started playing with that idea. What can I conceive and believe about the world, about my life, the life of my family? I've got 4 daughters, and they are my primary. If I had one primary motivation, it would be to do everything in my power to help ensure a world of abundance, a world of joy, a world of freedom and health and wellness. And so I actually get emotional when I think about my daughter's role in the vision, right? In fact, it's popping in my mind right now. So I'll share my vision. I started this 2 years ago. I'm 102 years old. I was 52 when I started the vision. And I'm on my trampoline showing my great grandkids how to do backflips. And I'm in the food forest that we are creating now at Galt's Landing. And there's life everywhere. It's, for I grew up in the in Christianity, and the Garden of Eden. Everybody's heard of that ideal, that concept, right? And so I started visualizing what would the Garden of Eden look like? What would it feel like? What would it be like to live in this place? And so that's the vision. It's a vision of sights and sounds. It's a sensory experience. It's an explosion of sights and sounds and smells and tastes and a vibrational frequency, of feeling of health and wellness and life. So I'll go back to a little bit more backstory. Then after I graduated college, I moved to Hawaii for 4 years. I lived in Lahaina. I was there often. So anyway, there's a very kind of interesting, very emotional thing that happened over the last few weeks here. But anyway, after Hawaii, I got a backpack because I kept hearing stories from my friends who were travelers, and they would tell me stories about going to these amazing different places. So I got a backpack, and I had saved about 10 grand, and I went on a backpacking tour to about 37 countries. I lived in Africa with the Maasai. I lived in Chiang Rai, went to Karachi, Pakistan, and Bali in Indonesia, and all sorts of places. Because I love people, I love culture. And I was by myself, and I was on $10 a day. So I was able to meet a lot of people because interestingly, I went on another tour later after I'd made a bunch of money, and it was boring compared to the backpacker tour because I stayed in hotels by myself. But anyway, as I was getting done with that 9 months of backpacking, I wrote my goals again. And I wrote that I wanted to be retired in 3 years with $3 million. I was ignorant. I was 29. I didn't really get that retirement is just silly. I'll never say that again. When I got home from the trip, I was dead broke. I had $600. I wasn't dead broke, and my parents let me live in their basement and use an old car, right? So I was 29, going on 30, and my goals were such that when I shared them with my friends, they all laughed at me because I had bartending experience and a teaching degree. And they said, it's impossible. You cannot do that. And I'm like, well, I just laughed at them too, because I knew that their belief systems and my belief systems, you know, I don't have to go with other people's belief systems in life. So the universe does what it does, and the path was shown, and I just got out of the way. In fact, one of my favorite little things is get out the way and let the universe play. How do we do that? By silencing our minds and just living in the present. So anyway, 3.5 years later, I started a mortgage company. I didn't know anything about mortgages, but it ended up doing $1.3 billion in revenue. And I then was very sick of that industry. I was like, you know, has anybody seen the show The Big Short? It's in that movie, they portray the mortgage industry and they nail it. It's a bunch of young partying people that just want to make money. And it was not appealing after a bit of time. So I started a foundation called the Wisdom Foundation. And my goal was to get emotional intelligence taught in every school. Because what I learned through the study of emotional intelligence changed my life radically. And I was actually shocked as I was learning this stuff. And I was like, why isn't emotional intelligence taught in every school in the country? It's infinitely more valuable to me than anything I'd learned in school. I mean, I literally learned more on a road trip listening to Dennis Waitley about life than I learned in all of school. Right. And then I learned later about the indoctrination and all that stuff, but that's another point. Anyway, I ended up spending the next year or so on a boat, just studying more about emotional intelligence. And I was getting kind of bored. You know, retirement is really boring. And so I was looking for the next adventure. And I heard about Costa Rica. I had been to Costa Rica before on a trip, but I loved it because I'm nature in the jungle. It's alive, right? And so anyway, I booked a trip to Costa Rica, and I started buying land, and I love the jungle. So I bought these big patches of jungle with a little bit of maybe some housing or a little cattle pasture or something. And as I started trading land, and this is 2006 and 7, I bought this cattle pasture, and my goal, my vision was to turn this cattle pasture into a golf course that had fruit trees up and down every fairway, and that turned a kind of dead cattle pasture into basically a nature reserve / golf course because I liked golf. I had not heard about permaculture at this time. I'd never heard the term. But as I was developing this golf course, in fact, the first thing we did was we bought out a fruit tree nursery, and we created our own fruit tree nursery to propagate fruit trees on the golf course. And now it's late 2008, and some gals are criticizing me heavily. They're yelling at me. They're calling me a bad guy in the local community. They said I'm a destroyer and I'm another just developing bad guy. And it made me feel bad. I'm like, why are they being so mean to me? You know? And so I invited these gals into my office. My intention was to share the vision I had about the golf course with them and to inspire them to advocate for this development. I failed radically. They were very angry. But, you know, in permaculture, you take feedback and you make adjustments, right? So after they left, I wiped the blood off and the sweat and the tears, and they kept talking to me about permaculture. And interestingly, they did so very aggressively, right? And they were mad, and they lived that way. Anyway, they told me about permaculture, and I hadn't heard of it before. So that night after they left, I went online and I looked up permaculture. And that was my big moment. It started, well, at the same time I learned permaculture, I had had my first two daughters, and I had learned that the world is controlled by psychopaths that would rather make money and kill the world than build, well, And the good part is you can make money and heal the world, right? But that they either weren't aware of that, or they were so radically nasty that, you know, these people that produce poisons simply for money while the world is being killed. So I went to a period of scarcity because I started asking the question, what's the world going to be like for my daughters? What's the world going to be like for my grandkids? And I spent 2 years intensely studying the problem. I was 12 hours a day, every day almost. I was infatuated with studying the problem. Now, when you're studying the problem, it doesn't necessarily feel good unless you're conscious enough to recognize that it's important to know the problem, but not live in the problem. But I wasn't there yet. So I was looking at all of the different elements in our world that are causing harm. And I was asking questions. And from a skeptical perspective, I can recognize now with great clarity all of the problems of the world. Well, then I read Bill Mollison's quote after about 2 years in. Though the problems of our world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple. And I started to bawl. And from that day forward, I decided, right, to study the solution, to focus on the solution while I was aware of the problem and while I still looked at headlines and I still was, you know, aware of the new problems as they arose. My intention then shifted to the question, what is the solution? This is about 15 years ago or so. I've been obsessed with that question ever since. Now, here's the interesting part. When you think about the concept, the feeling of obsession, how do you feel? Do you feel a little bit scarcity? Do you feel a little bit, is it obsession is the foundation of obsession is still scarcity, right? Because I went from hyper focus on the problem to now obsessed about the solution. And about, well, I had 20 million bucks at the time. I had made this money from scratch in the mortgage industry. I invested every penny plus another 80,000 into figuring out the solution. And I failed and I failed and I failed. I built eco villages in Nicaragua and Costa Rica. I invited people up to these eco villages. And because I was living in this kind of a little bit under the level of faith and courage and consciousness and willingness, I was living in that energy of obsession. I was attracting people that were takers. I was a giver at the time. Now, givers, that's not consciousness, right? The fair exchange of value, the voluntary exchange of value is where consciousness is. I was giving in order to basically say that I'm not quite conscious, but here, take this. And that's showing that I'm a good guy, right? A lot of people do that. They want to prove that they're a good person, so they give of their time without the awareness of receiving, right? Who's done that? I mean, hasn't everybody done that a little bit? So anyway, I attracted energy and people that were takers, and I recognize this. And this is so true through so many intentional communities. The intention is good because we're aware of the lack. So, but the attention sometimes is missing the component of consciousness, right? Of awareness of what's happening. So what happened is I had, you know, they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I paved that road, right? Up our 4 miles up a dirt road, 4-wheel drive only sometimes of the year. And we had this community with one kitchen, one pool, one community center, and everything was rocking. We were the most successful development in the country of Costa Rica, 2010 and 11. And then the government came in, and because we were so successful, they came in and they said, you pay us $20,000 cash and we won't shut you down. And when I first heard this, I got scared again, even more scared, because I had my life invested into this development, right? 700 acres of beautiful land. We were using now I had started learning permaculture. So our footprint was 3% of the land. We put food forests everywhere throughout the community. The intention was to have a completely food self-reliant community that created all of its own needs on the property. The intention was then to demonstrate to the world that we could do this, right? Then the government came in and extorted us. We took them to court and we won every round. We got very fortunate because the person from Menai that wrote the map of where we could develop and where we couldn't, right? In other words, where the developable land was and where the jungle started, he became our primary witness. The other entity in the Costa Rican government that's actually supposed to enforce environmental infractions, right? They're supposed to help the environment. Well, they were the criminals, and they were trying to extort money from everybody, saying that they were hurting the environment. So we won every round. A court-appointed actuary says that we are owed $28 million. We haven't been paid. That was 9 years ago, and I'm not holding my breath, but that's beside the point. When this started happening, fear started coming into our community, and then it was 2012, and people started talking politics. Everybody was getting along wonderfully. We had parties at the community center at least once a week. And I mean, we had a very diverse group of people, but still, people were generally very happy with each other. Then the campaign started. Now, this is obviously relevant today because over the next 15 months, the goal of the criminals that are running our world is to divide and conquer, right? The whole strategy is a strategy of dividing and conquering, right? So when we can become aware of that, we can step outside of this narrative and we can truly know that everybody does the best they can with what they got. And to hate somebody because they believe something different than you is control. Hate, fear, and scarcity are the control mechanisms of the wicked, of the people who are destroying our planet, who are subsidizing the production of glyphosate and all the poisons around the world. So anyway, back to 2012, everybody started fighting. And I've never, in fact, a little side note, I was just invited by two prominent Orlando businessmen. One of them got 40,000 votes in the last election, and they say he won, but the machines didn't show it. But anyway, they asked me to be mayor of Orlando. This was last Tuesday. And I contemplated it for about 30 minutes. It felt so right because I imagine Orlando being a seed of abundance that demonstrates to the world how to use the people's resources. The budget of Orlando is $1.4 billion. Can you imagine when we take that $1.4 billion and instead of subsidizing the use of mowers and lawns and poisons and all of that crap, we actually put food forests in every school, in every prison, in every opportunity zone, in every community park? If we did that, and we will, it would change the world. So anyway, back to the community. So here's the funny part. I wasn't allowed to be on the campaign. I wasn't eligible. I was disqualified for running for mayor of Orlando because I've never voted, because I don't believe in governmente. Govern means to manage, control, or steer, and mente means mind. Governmente is the problem. The belief in authority, the belief that we should give our power to somebody else who is openly destroying the world and causing war and pain and suffering is the most dangerous superstition. And Larkin Rose wrote a book about that. It's called The Most Dangerous Superstition. It's awesome. Anyway, so I was outside of the system at this time back in Costa Rica and watching this fight going on. And I was stressing because now the government had caused us a lot of problems by shutting us down for about 6 months in the height of our success in building. Now the people were scared, and now the people were fighting, and it became a very stressful place to live. And then I started studying the other eco villages around the world, and I recognized that they were all going through the same thing. Has anybody heard that? The eco villages, the success rate of an eco village, I've heard it's 5%, and those just haven't been around long enough. Now, the good news in that is a fella named Tag, he has created a development model. And this is a little bit of a side note, but it's relevant, where he buys large tracts of land, and the only stipulation is, and then he sells them in chunks, whatever somebody wants. You can want 5 acres, buy 5 acres. You want 50 acres, you buy 50 acres. He's bought, I believe it's thousands of acres of land yet. His one stipulation is that there's no HOA, and he's kicking butt. He's one of the most successful developers in the country right now, along with Axe de Real, which is Axe Decentralized Real Estate. Another, they're crushing it because they're using the laws of mankind, voluntarism, instead of this legal system. And by the way, legal is the undoing of natural law. Legal is the undoing of God's law. When we come back to natural law, the permaculture ethics, earth care, people care, and reinvesting the surplus in a way that benefits humanity. When we simply follow those guidelines, that's what we need to do. That's what we get to do. So anyway, the entity, the village got all just muddled with people fighting. A lot of people sold their condos, their villas, and they went back to the United States. And this has happened all over the world when we think that we can use the legal system to solve our problems instead of the permaculture ethics and face-to-face communication. So anyway, then I moved back after trying to do business in Costa Rica, investing literally almost all my money. I got back to the United States, and I had 70,000 left. And I started a business. What is the first? Oh, I started a business called the Food House, FUUD. I designed a really fancy greenhouse. And then there's a guy, I talked to Scott Pittman and another guy named, I can't remember his name right now, but anyway, they started criticizing my design. I thought it was pretty cool at the time, and so did a lot of people, a lot of wealthy people, in fact, started investing in this greenhouse manufacturing. And it was a greenhouse that captured its own water. We had aquaponics and hydroponics. We had a light, an LED light that was a bug zapper that was positioned over the tilapia tanks. So at night, the bug zapper would feed the tilapia. We had a microgreens trays in there. We had solar on the roof. It was a pretty cool greenhouse, right? Solar evacuated tubes to heat the water and it's still a very functional system. But when I started getting criticism, I recognized a fundamental error that I had made. The amount that this greenhouse cost back then with the aluminum, it was going to be $50,000. And when I recognized that if you spent that same $50,000 building soil, the return would be infinitely better. So I could not move forward with that greenhouse because I recognized that there was a better way, a better path, right? So it was such an interesting thing when we recognize that there's a better path. Sometimes because we've got momentum going a certain way, we stick with that way. And then there's a consternation, there's a discord. Has anybody felt that? You know, you get on a path and all of a sudden you recognize that it's not the right path, but you've got so much momentum that you can't get off the path. Get off that path. The minute you get off that path, you will feel a weight released from your spirit, from your energy. It's profound. Now, you might need another path before you get off that path, but that's what I suggest. Immediately start putting your energy towards asking new questions, towards getting on another path, right? It'll probably be related, right? So, by the way, this is profoundly valuable to me, and I know it will be to you if you practice it. It's the question that solves the problem. So the asking of the new question. So if you're on a particular path in any area of your life that's not going well, maybe it's a relationship with a family member, a friend, husband, wife, anybody. Maybe it's a business partner. Maybe it's any of that stuff. Ask a question that's exactly opposite of what you're experiencing. Start by saying, what can I learn from this? Then ask the question, and then wait for the answer, by the way, right? Write that down if you want to. What can I learn from this situation? Then a lot of times your arrogant mind or your ego mind will say, I can learn not to do business with psychopaths, or I can learn not to trust people. No, 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 no. Let the ego settle. Let those energetic, like angry answers, because they'll come, but then let them just laugh them off. Keep asking the question, and then go to the next layer. What's actually good about this? What's actually good about this person? And when you start listing what's good about that person, things will start to shift. You'll start seeing this, again, this fundamental truth. Everybody always does the best they can based on what they've got in their head, in their values, in their attitudes, in their judgments, in their consciousness, right? So to hate somebody for doing the best they can is ignorant on your part, on my part. So I settle back into that knowing, I ask, what's good about this? Now, I'm not suggesting that we should stick with people that aren't aligned with us, that don't resonate with us, that don't support us. In fact, this is one of the fastest ways to find an honorable way out of those relationships. So I went through these processes. I spent a bunch of money in the food house. Now I had less money. Right? Then I went and got credit cards. I went and got like about $90,000 worth of credit cards, so I could have something to live on, because I'm unemployable. I I have been an entrepreneur all my life. A lot of friends were saying, go back and sell cars or sell mortgages or sell something. I couldn't do it. I really, it just wasn't in my spirit. And it was scary as heck, my friends, because now I've got a family. I've got $6,500 in monthly expenses. I've got not much money left. And I started a new business called Mobile Greens and Wellness, right? Designed a food truck that I had all the shit in there, and I had solar panels on top. I had an atmospheric water generator system food truck, and I grew microgreens and I sold microgreen smoothies. I turned my garage into a microgreens garage. Of greens, I will never grow microgreens again at scale. I was a slave to those little buggers. I could not leave those microgreens alone for a day, otherwise they would die. And I've seen people do automated watering. Awesome. Please let's get automated watering for microgreens, and then maybe I'll grow more again. I got into the food truck business, and my goal and my intention is always, and here this is evolved, to catalyze a shift in awareness. How do we catalyze a shift in awareness that leads to mass adoption of taking words out and food lawns? Right? That's what I do. My question has evolved to that, and it continue to evolve. Because when we do, we solve mass extinction and devastation, cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. We end world hunger, and we end tyranny. When we poisons out our systems and grow food instead of lawn at scale, when we have mass adoption of that, we change the world. I had one piece of land at my community in Gale. So I took $50,000 out from a friend of mine against my property, which was worth a lot more than that. And I designed a kiosk. I built the kiosk, and I had credit. So I bought all the products on credit. and I started running the kiosk. November 2019. We were crushing it. Everybody loved it. I had multiple people say this is the most lively, beautiful. It was alive, right? It was a living kiosk. It's everywhere. We had a oil diffuser with natural smells coming out. I was selling CBD and microgreens and all these different elements. My intention again was to inspire people to do permaculture landscapes. So we literally just ordered our sign, and now it was February 2020. And my friends, I recognize what's happening. I knew this was coming way before it was coming. So when it started, when the COVID narrative came, I knew what was happening. And they shut me down. Basically, they shut them all down. So now I'm dead broke. I've spent my last money. My credit is at 80,000, and I'm scared. I have bills to pay. I have no way to pay them. And I was walking down the road, and I was probably had some tears in my eyes. And I let go. I let go of the scarcity. I let go of the fear. And I remember the step I took when everything cleared up. And I could see more clearly, like literally, it was night out, but I could see more clearly than I could 5 steps before. I was seeking this weekend in Sanford about what was going on. And if you go online right now on YouTube, there's a show called Creating Abundance in Your Backyard, right? It went out to a lot of people. I was more than full time because this is all I was doing was trying to figure out how to make make money to pay the bills. And I had a part-time designer and another friend, Travis, who was very committed and helpful. And he helped me with the website, putting like a couple page website up. We launched, it was Earth Day 2021. What was that, 28 months ago or so? We are now serving people, helping people grow food in 54 countries and 50 US states. And it's unbelievable in a world of Newtonian physics. This is not, the things that have happened on this journey cannot be described in any logical way. There's something happening. So I was out, the show was out for about 2-3 weeks. So during my 20s, The Crocodile Hunter was my favorite show. During my 30s, for about 5 years, Entourage was my favorite show. And the main actor, Vinny Chase from Entourage, calls me up and says, I want to do a food forest. So it happened so fast. My favorite producer, my favorite actor at different times in my life, we do a TV show together called The Land of Plenty, right? We did the pilot. NBC immediately saw it and offered me a contract. But they have what's called a morality clause in their contract. Now, NBC and CBS, all the mainstream networks, what do they sell to fund their TV shows? They sell poisons. So I turned them down. And then I was blacklisted. And I'm okay with that because under no circumstance will I sell poisons. And so that was that. Now, and this gets really strategic. Now with all of the energy and momentum that we have with all the social media influencer stuff around the world, we are now catalyzing a shift with bringing in the influencers of all types. And everybody listening, we are the solution, right? We've been told that people are the problem. We've been told that people are bad and should be ashamed and humiliated, right? Now, I'm recognizing that people are part of the problem, but the catalyst is not individuals. The catalyst is the governmente. The catalyst is the support system and BlackRock, right? BlackRock, and everybody can look this up. This is absolutely fascinating. The company BlackRock did $21 trillion, according to one estimate 2 years ago. And what did they invest in? They invest in the poisons and the centralization of power in our world. And they're run by a computer named Aladdin. A computer runs the financial world. AI is already in control. And again, my friends, you can look this up. And I don't mean in control of nature. AI is in control of the monetary system. BlackRock is not only the name, it is the intention of the entity that is the most powerful entity in our world. So how do we change this? When we bring together, when we combine. In fact, Victor Hugo, 200 years ago, said there's one thing stronger than all of the armies of the world, and that is an idea whose time has come. My friends, the opposite of governmente is enlightenment, which simply means a mind free of programming. When we can settle and meditate and commune with nature and love and raise our frequency, our energy to the frequency, the energy of faith and courage and joy and love and service, when we do that, the idea whose time has come is also permaculture. It's the Garden of Eden. When we demonstrate the truth of nature, of God's design, whatever perspective you come from, when we demonstrate this and then we invite the influencers, and everybody listening is an influencer. You might be able to influence 5 or 10 people, or you might be able to influence billions of people. But everybody here is an influencer. When we bring together us as influencers and we speak the same simple message strategically, and the message is this: when we take the poisons out and grow food instead of lawns, we solve all of the world's biggest problems, right? The lawn takes more pesticides, more human resources than any other crop. It's $100 billion a year industry. So when we use the same resources that we're currently using to maintain a crop that is the foundation of humanity's dis-ease and enslavement, we create the Garden of Eden everywhere. So the next layer is we bring together the biggest influencers, right? People with the biggest audiences. We got Russell Brand and Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson and Karen. I don't know what side of the aisle they're on. When we can get them strategically speaking the same message, and when I say strategically and tactically, we go after the corporations that are poisoning the world. When we've got influencers of this nature and athletes, and we come together. And by the way, 20, 30, 40 minutes ago, right before this call, I was just directly introduced to Joe and Tyson. Right? Now, imagine when we come together and we call out Home Depot, and we say to Home Depot at scale, Home Depot, we've got a product that we would like you to consider. Take the glyphosate and the poisons off of your shelves and start selling compost tea. Guess what? We can brew compost tea at your Home Depot parking lot. Your cost of goods will be pennies. You will make more money while you're infusing life into our system as opposed to death, right? And maybe Home Depot will mess now. Maybe one of you will send this to somebody at Home Depot, and they'll start saying, Mike, we got to get on the trend because the unsustained nature of the poisons, it has to end. There's only one way. Now go to True Green. And in fact, this is interesting because I have been studying the problem for so long, I can catch it way before, most people, just because I've studied it. So I was on a call with one of my designers the other day, and he was putting in a big food forest somewhere in, I think, Michigan, and a True Green lawn care truck. Now, of the lie in the name, True Green Lawn Care. The whole name's a lie because that's how they do it. that is a company that sprays glyphosate poisons on lawns all over the United States. So I went in, and you could do this right now. Who owns True Green? It's one of the oldest investment firms in the world. And guess who they're partners with? BlackRock. Of course they are. So now here's the same philosophy that I stated at the beginning. Turn the problem into the solution, a permaculture principle at its best, and say, what is good about this entity? Now, most people might say, there's nothing. This entity's killing the world. Well, what's good about it? Right? Can anybody name something good about that entity? I can. They have millions of people that are employed by that entity that simply want a paycheck, right? They have trucks all over the United States. When we inspire them to take poisons out of their vets and spray compost tea and lay biochar, what would happen? That one thing happened. True Green Lawn Care actually meant it. It would affect million people positively in a very short amount of time, right? So what I'm saying is, it will only take an inspired minute to change the world. Right? That's it. And right on the cusp of it, in the next 15 months, thanks to all of us on this call, thanks to the strategy that I'm laying out, thanks to the Permaculture Network together, we are to change the world. We're going to inspire and empower mass adoption. The solution is here. It's among us. It's all over the place. The energy. And by the way, to demonstrate this, we are putting these systems all over the world, in Thailand, in Africa, in Russia, in China, in Canada, all over the United States. We're putting demonstration systems, which are basically permaculture designed food forests. And then we are layering in multiple layers. So everybody listening and all your friends are invited to Galt's Landing in Central Florida. It's called, there's a website, galtslanding.farm. GALTSLANDING.farm. We are demonstrating off-grid complete freedom, complete self-reliance. We have 230 different types of food. We started with a blank canvas of sand, Florida sand, that many people told me you cannot grow food there. And 17 months later, we have a food forest that's blowing people's minds. You can walk in the food forest with these, it's like a symphony of life everywhere. It's truly awesome. And that's only about on 1 acre. We have about 50 acres, and we probably got 2.5 acres planted with a diversity of crops. But people are coming, over 1,000 people have come in the last year, and about 30% of them end up crying out of joy. Like it's that profound, because it's not only the food forest, which by itself is pure abundance and joy. But when you add on the story and the strategy to it, people are starting to see a path towards the solutions that we are facing. Because my friends, we are at war, right? A lot of people don't like to face it, but there are people that are intentionally trying to control and harm us. By their deeds, you shall know them. So that's not to create fear in anybody's mind. It's to create awareness, because the word choice is almost always misused. The word itself implies an awareness. But if you don't have an awareness of choice, then you don't have a choice. Our job primarily is to create an awareness of choice, to demonstrate what's possible. Because by demonstrating what's possible at scale around the world, then we influence our friends, our family, our neighbors to show them what's possible in their yards. And when people, I was just talking to somebody the other day in a rich community that spends millions of dollars I mean, it's ridiculous on landscaping. They don't have any fruit trees. They're not allowed to have fruit trees. And I walked in there and I said, you could put all this could be food production. You could be spending the same resources and you could literally feed your whole community right here. And you know what they said? One gal said, oh, no, no, no. The raccoons would come and they would destroy our houses. So we've got play to do. People have been conditioned to fear nature, to fear the divine, to fear the frequency of faith and courage and love and joy, right? They're programmed into the habit of fear. You know, so if you watch any mainstream, once you start seeing it, you cannot unsee it. It's all about fear and scarcity and programming. So step out of the matrix, step out of the government day, step out of the program, and start communing with nature and start demonstrating freedom. And by the way, we also don't get any permits. We don't pay any taxes. We demonstrate. We will not comply with a government that is harming us. Right? So that's what we're doing. And I would love to answer any questions that you might have.
Bradley asks, humans tend to still create food systems and production that only creates food for humans. How does this vision of food forests create food for all beings and humans?
Yeah. So I've actually never seen a food forest that is only for humans. Our food forest at Galt's Landing is loaded. In fact, we've had several releases of beneficial insects. We are going to be releasing snakes pretty soon, the kind of snakes that we want. We have more birds, more butterflies. We have bees. We have hummingbirds. We have turtles. We have massive amounts of life coming into our food forest. So every food forest that I'm aware of is an attractor and a supporter of life.
Excellent. So yeah, I mean, my questions are mostly about, like, let's say somebody wants to join Food Forest Abundance, because I think there's a lot of really bright people out there, but they're sort of divided, or they're not in a team yet. And so they're looking for a team to join.
Yeah.
Are there ways they can begin to participate with Food Forest Abundance, or are you hiring more designers?
Yes. So we are all about collaborating. We have no NDAs, no non-competes, no patents. Everything we do is open source. And as a result of that, it's just pure fun. We don't have to argue with people about a lot of things. So my point is you can join us as an abundance ambassador. You can join us as a designer. You can join us as an installer. So we've got installers around the world. You can join us as a Freedom Farm Academy owner. A Freedom Farm Academy is an off-grid homestead that demonstrates all of the principles of permaculture, and it becomes an education and demonstration center. So it stacks functions massively. When somebody comes to our Freedom Farm Academy, they can taste the food, they can do tours, they can buy solar panels, and then we've got a connection. They can buy a food forest design, they can buy an installation, they can stay at our rentals. We have Airbnbs. So the Freedom Farm Academy is kind of the culmination of all of the pieces of the freedom puzzle in one place. We're even opening a school with 25 kids, and the primary objective of the school is to teach the kids self-reliance on every conceivable level, right? So the kids will be operating the greenhouse. The kids will be then teaching the society about how to be self-reliant, how to grow food, how to use fish and chickens and bees and all of the permaculture principles. And guess what? They'll get paid for it. So the school itself will be a profit center, and the kids and the families will benefit from that, right? And then we're doing a healing hive with healing modalities. No medical doctors will be allowed unless they're the conscious ones that have made the transition. So yeah, so infinite different ways.
Okay. And let me just point out to you guys, we talked a lot about the permaculture design principles yesterday. Obviously we observe, we stack our functions, we have redundancy, um, you know, we create connections between our inputs and our outputs, right? So there is no waste in permaculture. And what I think is really special about what Jim is doing is this is the leading edge of what we call social permaculture. And there's actually a chapter in the very back at the very end of Bill Mollison's book that's like the Bible of permaculture, the Permaculture Designer's Manual, the big black book, and it talks all about social permaculture. So all of this stuff about people and networking and business and making things you know sustainable or beyond sustainable is regenerative, right? Regenerative also on the economic levels and the social levels, that is the leading edge. So this
Yep.
is this is some of the most important stuff happening right now in the world.
Together we win. Together we overcome this incredible insanity right now.
So,
Yeah.
and then just to connect it to, our immediate project here, each of our team members that you see here has their own visions for their life, their own plans to design and build holistically and naturally, and potentially, create a food forest or at least a garden around their home or future home. So, are there any specific examples or case studies that you want to highlight, Jim, from all of your experience that you think would help people the most when they're just starting out? They're creating their own, master plan, understanding, what species to use, how to shape the landscape, and even how to site the house on the landscape, or integrate their home and their homestead into the surrounding community and ecosystem. I know it's a big question, but
yeah, a lot of steps.
direction.
So, Matthew, you had a question first, and then I'll.
I guess it might be more of a statement. My partner and I
Okay.
bought a 9-hole defunct golf course that we're trying to turn into a food forest. And when you talked about turning it into a golf course / food forest, I was like, I'm skipping one of those
Yeah.
steps. I'm going directly to food forest. I'm not a big golf fan.
Yes.
But on that note, I'm very turned on to all you have to say about like the academy and being a place of representation of what a permaculture might look like and how it could apply, and having it open for, uh, I guess, for tours and demonstrations. That really jives well with what we think about and what we talk about here. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well, get a hold of us at Food Forest Abundance. Reach out to me directly. My email is jim@foodforestabundance.com. And then we can talk about the Freedom Farm Academy model. And by the way, everything we do is based in voluntarism, right? So our contracts are based in permaculture principles. Anybody can come and go whenever they want. We'll just keep our brand, of course. But
Yeah.
we have no hooks in anything we do, because that is just we want to
It's just
show
not you.
a better way. It's just not us, and it's just it's icky. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back to Scott's question. I would go back to you, Scott, with regard to housing and placement. You're the expert. You're one of the leaders in the field of how to integrate housing into landscapes. And I'm so glad we're connected on that. So what we're always looking for, the new way. We're always looking for something that adds benefits to on every level, right? To the individual, to the family, to the community, and to the world, and to the earth. And when you can stack all those functions, for instance, we're using, they have a model of, it's cold form 3D printed steel. So instead of using pine or any of these tinderbox construction methods that have mold and termites and fires, we're using 80% recycled steel, which is 100% recyclable. And I love that, especially in Florida with the strength and with the hurricanes and the termites and the mold and all that stuff, especially with what's going on with houses going up in flames all over. But anyway, there's a lot going on with collaborating. That's a big thing, right? We're all about how do we serve each other, and service is the ultimate selfishness in a way, because the more we serve, the more we get. Right? So there's no reason not to serve.
Anyone heard about electroculture? Have we talked about this, Jim?
Yeah. We have it all over. And a fun, real fun story. There are what I would previously call miracles happening every single day. And now I just see them as just part of the universe and part of how it works. But about 6-8 months ago, I got 2 emails in a day from people I respect. Jim, you got to check out electroculture. Right. And I decided at that moment, I'm going to check out electroculture. And then this guy shows up named Aaron a couple minutes later. And he's like, hey, I heard about your place. I'd like to do a tour. He was on the schedule to do a tour. So we did a little tour. And I said, what do you do, by the way? Electroculture. So the decision and the hiring of the fellow who did it happened within like 40 minutes. And within a week, we had electroculture all over our property. I absolutely love it.
Amazing. Yeah, it's brand new to me, but the whole concept ties in perfectly with the physics that Dan Winter teaches about, in the sense that, you know, there's a field of electricity around everything all the time. You could call it plasma, and if you can tap into some of that vibration, it can cause health, it can cause plants to grow. And apparently, if you put a copper rod in the ground with some kind of copper spiral or flower shaped antenna of copper wire, it affects the plant growth, sometimes dramatically. And we see that similar phenomena with things like the Great Pyramids, because they also create a negative ion wind around them that increases this electrical field. And there are measurable effects on the seed germination rates, plant growth, as well as human or animal fertility, human growth, the development of child's brain. So it all is interconnected to architecture and agriculture, and it all comes back to being in harmony with the forces around us.
Yeah. And we also have what has been kind of presented to me as a chemtrail disruptor, and we have EMF conditioner, right? Electromagnetic field conditioner. I don't know enough to speak to these things in any kind of detail, but I have the feeling that there's something to it. I'm glad I have them. That's all I can really say about it. But yeah, we're into trying new things, and we might try some things that are completely hogwash. Like, somebody says a lot about crystals. I'm going to put some crystals in the ground. I don't know if they work for sure, but I've got enough people I respect telling me they do. I'm going to try it.
Oh yeah. I mean, and we know things intuitively, so you're just going with your intuition. And just on that tip, I just know a little bit, but yeah, crystals do a lot. And it's not just some like woo-woo thing. There's measurable effects. And one of the leading material scientists of this century, Dr. Rustum Roy, basically the inventor of homeopathy, okay? He showed that if you put a certain substance, let's say inside of a vat of water, like a crystal, it will measurably change the structure of the water in that container. So even one small crystal in a large vat of 1,000 gallons of water, it structures the water. So there's I forget the name of the phenomena in physics, but a very tiny amount of something can change the rest of the materials around it. So Just
It's funny you say that. I have crystals in my Berkey.
of course. So just a little side note back to what I said earlier, the phenomena of a small amount of materials affecting the structure of the materials around it is called epitaxy. So you can look that up and research and understand why homeopathy even works. But yeah, back to the soils, you know, some of the stuff that I've heard from my permaculture teachers and colleagues, you know, it really kind of comes back to understanding the soil microbiology, the micro ecosystem, you know, and people often say, well, if you use biochar, so the biochar is like this, you know, partially burned wood, right? Charcoal, and it creates these little, like, they're like hotels. These are like massive hotels for the micro biome in the soil. And so a little bit of biochar, little chunks of that mixed in, and a lot of aeration, giving this soil time to like develop and mature. It's a whole ecosystem in there, invisible to our eyes. And the more rich the micro ecosystem, then the more rich the nutrients will be. The plants will be able to uptake nutrients, and you know, we have Caitlin Leck here today with us, who's going to talk in a little while, and she just knows a ton about the soil microbiology, and so I'm sure we'll get into it.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you all for what you're doing. I mean, paying attention to this work is really what the world needs more than anything right now, is to serve, faith and courage, joy. Let's build life again.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, everybody.
Wonderful words. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to play, please reach out to me. Let's change the world.